very much, Michael, for both the invitation and a nice introduction. And I'm going to share the screen for you to see some slides. And in presentation mode. Yeah, hopefully you can see again our long title that we've agreed upon. And it's the two of us, Linda Toledo and myself. And seeing this title, you might think actually that it's really hybris and maybe irresponsible to talk about such a broad topic like sustainable housing in just a 30 minutes lecture. But actually, we both were very tempted. We give in the temptation, and for me, it's the first time that I can look at sustainable housing that broadly. I've been looking at particular items, particular questions again and again, but this is the first opportunity. And then it came also with the proposal to actually do it in a tandem with Linda. So I just gave in just for the fun of it. And I hope that everybody has a little inspiration and a little fun also in this session to come. And as you can see, we are looking at this, if I can switch slides. Yeah, if we are looking at it from two complementary perspectives, you could say, with Linda looking at it from an architectural perspective and me from governance. This is reflected in this structure that you see now of our presentation. But as you've asked us also to introduce ourselves a little, maybe I start saying that I'm at the University of Freiburg here, heading a small, tiny research group on actually urban sustainability governance with a disciplinary background in political sciences and geography. And I did my PhD in science and technology studies. And added recently urban studies and environmental governance kind of to the portfolio, with the research interest being more broadly actually the governance of infrastructures and also the role of knowledge, different forms of knowledge play in that, and in the context of transitions, social technical change, transitions to sustainability. These my broad research interests, mostly in energy, but recently also in housing. We've just started a project with colleagues from KIT in the context of the Innovation Campus Sustainability to explore actually the key hurdles for retrofitting in a way that is socially just or keeps rents low in the regions of Karlsruhe and Freiburg. But this is recent, this research interest actually. What is more longstanding is a personal interest in housing issues, but I'll come back to this, having co-founded more than 25 years ago a housing cooperative and observing things here in Freiburg. That has been a long-standing interest, and I'll delve into this a little. But maybe Linda, if you want to complete the picture for now.
Yes, thank you, Philipp. So my name is Linda Toledo. I am a senior researcher and Marie Curie Fellow in URAC Research. I am also an assistant professor at the Faculty of Engineering, Department of Architecture at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow. My background, as Philipp said before, is architecture, and I've been looking into issues of comfort when we are trying to attain low energy design, which is something quite needed today, and also what are the requirements for increasing adaptive capacities in light of climate change. So I've been looking specifically since 10 years now at the risk of overheating and poor indoor quality in low energy housing. And I have approached this from with fieldwork studies, so getting inside those homes, measuring with the sensors, but also asking residents how they felt in these homes. So yeah, to look at what are the adaptive capacities that these occupants can have to deal also with the predicted increase in temperatures. Thank you.
When, thank you, Linda. When we started discussing our shared contribution, we very quickly came up with one point that we both wanted to make in our different perspectives, in our different countries, also that the UK and Germany, we both felt that there's a strange emphasis on the building envelope, and this you see also in our title, in the very material qualities of building envelopes. And we wanted to both to kind of broaden the perspective and highlight some issues that we feel are underexplored or under emphasized also in policies. So this is how we came to a discussion on actually what dimensions to look at when we talk about this very broad topic of sustainable housing. And I think we can all agree that it's important to look at houses when talking about sustainable housing, houses in their material physical form and in their quality. But as I've also mentioned, there's policies about this, the political dimension, to try and shape these material manifestations. But then we can go on and add another layer, which is the economic developments. And what we would also like to add is kind of a social dimension. How are things organized? How are people organizing? How are they perceiving also the situation of housing? So these are kind of 4 dimensions that we would like to distinguish. And of course, you could be more differentiated, but this, I think, is sufficient for today. And the same holds for kind of levels of scale, levels on the spatial scale, to be more precise, where we can distinguish from the bottom, from the household level, several levels up to the international. And we kind of cluster for the purpose of this talk. And of course, also these levels play out differently in the different dimensions. So this is kind of a very simplistic combination, but for the purpose of our talk, we felt this is helpful as a kind of a boundary object of interdisciplinary collaboration, and we'll relate back to this in our talks occasionally. So hopefully this helps, and you can keep it in mind now when Linda talks about her research and her findings.
So we will go next. Yes, thank you so much, Philipp. So with regards to this slide, I should mention that there is a political dimension all over Europe, what is called the zero carbon agenda, or the EU Green Deal, or the renovation wave. There are many different projects around Europe driving significant changes in the building regulations, all aimed at improving energy efficiency. So this in turn has led to a major shift in housing design. So for instance, in the British traditional housing, the main sources of heat loss are through the building fabric and unwanted ventilation. Next. On the other hand, contemporary housing design prioritizes high levels of insulation to prevent heat loss through the building fabric. Additionally, there is airtightness, which refers to a degree to which the building envelope, so walls, roofs, windows, resist to uncontrolled ventilation, uncontrolled movement of air. So this increased level of airtightness eliminates any unwanted ventilation. So these new homes are very well insulated, are tight, are very hermetic, and often quite smaller compared to traditional housing. So for instance, you can see in this image the U values, which is the thermal transmittance in in walls, the major architectural element here considered, how has drastically reduced. So you can appreciate the existing stock, which is 90% of what is out there, has a very very high U value, whereas the new, more recently highly insulated homes has reduced that number quite heavily. These features are beneficial, of course, in terms of energy savings. It also reduces, though, the natural ventilation present in older homes. And this is growing concerns that air tightness might lead to a decline in indoor air quality of these new homes. So next slide, please. And this is some of the research I conducted through my PhD. So overall, these are all very high efficient, low energy homes. Overall, this progressive fast change has contributed to an increase in instances of discomfort, not only in new housing, but this is also related to renovated housing, as the first case on the left. And this net zero agenda is actually promoting such an extreme change in housing design that can lead to unintended consequences. Next. So in these cases, we found occurrence of overheating in both new and renovated homes. And it was also interesting to see that to attain such big reductions in energy consumption, designers have now to resort to modeling and building simulations to predict performance. This is an innovative way of designing that has profoundly switched the way we provide comfort. Now it is entirely delegated to design, whereas in previous decades, the provision of comfort was delegated to energy. So there were different opportunities. You could turn the heat on, you could not turn it on. Now it's much more prescribed. So the research sector has been providing evidence of a gap between as-design and as-built performances. And there are also numerous instances of energy consumption being increased even after renovations. So all this to say that energy efficient strategies, when confined only to the view of the building fabric, and if improperly implemented, can lead to unintended consequences. And there is the sociologists of energy have tried to theorize this performance gap phenomena, but as being a discrepancy between knowledge transfer. So some of the issues for performance for the performance gap are related to occupant-building interaction, that it is not properly understood, not properly implemented. Just some of the big examples is you can see in the pictures the complete lack in solar control. Or some of the issues of, not even being able to reach the windows to open for ventilation. So there are some issues related to this occupant building, synergic missed opportunities due to all the amount of innovation that is now being brought to the housing design. So just to make explicit, the pursuit of low energy housing is much necessary. And it's important to also state that research is playing a big role in promoting energy efficiency and learn from what works and what does not work. So if I am going to engage with this, I'm trying also to be critical with things that are not working properly at the moment. Next, please. And besides energy efficiency and its pursuit and low carbon reductions, housing has to provide a shelter. Next. So in addition of houses not performing optimally, we are now facing a growing concern in the rising temperatures. So climate change is actually changing. Climate is changing faster, and the temperature in terms of magnitude of temperature increase in terms of magnitude, frequency, duration, and severity has become a present-day hazard. So housing needs to adapt also in consideration of climate change. So when we think of climate change as well, we have to think of the cascading hazards when there is poverty or in terms of other concurring events such as flooding. So we like to point out that we are asking housing to respond to numerous aspirations. We need to acknowledge that there is a risk that relies across different scales, across different dimensions, and so we need to look at the intersection of those, so to avoid intersecting inequalities and also fuel poverty or inequitable transition. So next, please. So going back to the framework that Philipp has just introduced, I like to think that, of course, putting my research into this framework, of course, there is a political push in energy efficiency with a very highly ambitious, very ambitious agenda of achieving net zero emissions from net zero greenhouses from by 2050. This is a very pushed agenda. On the parallel, I like to express some in terms of the spatial scale. When we are looking, if you're looking on the left-hand side, well, if we are looking only at the building scale, we're then missing opportunities of how the household and occupants interact with the building, so to maintain healthy indoor environments. Now, there is, in fact, an increasing important dimension, which is the social. On the complete far right end, you can see it should consider buildings in terms of being players, not only for a mitigation agenda, but also for an adaptation agenda that can provide healthy living environments, both physically and socially, for citizens with regards to any hazard. So we are asking a lot from sustainable housing, and I now leave the floor to Philipp again.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. And looking at the same metrics again from a German perspective and through the lens of a political scientist, I can only support that also here we see a very strong and primary emphasis on energy efficiency and only in new build, I mean, mostly in new build. There has also been a secondary political objective of building more housing units in order to influence the housing market. This is also, at least the current government is aiming at this. But the results that we see are mostly in the energy efficiency realm. So the efficiency of new buildings in Germany has increased a lot. This is really a tremendous achievement, and it's very important. And just to also say, I've been living in a passive house with lower than 15 kilowatt hours per square meter a year, and I've really enjoyed it. I loved it. So that just to make sure that we are not questioning here the political necessity to increase efficiency in housing, but that very focus is very strong, and also the achievements have been not that fit, not fit to purpose. And we want to highlight some more fields here. Energetic retrofitting has also been on the political agenda lately in Germany, with very little results, actually. Very much the rate of retrofitting is still around 1%, which is much far away from achieving any targets. But coming back to this, and the efficiency could be complemented more with a shift in the sources of heating to renewable heating. That would lower the necessity to increase the efficiency. And that is a current debate, a very recent debate. There has been just a manifesto last week published by some professors questioning the very strong emphasis on efficiency of the building envelope. And there has been a shift now since last year only, in 2023, and the German government has started kind of a political agenda and designed the first instruments for the shift of heating infrastructures to renewable sources. But this comes quite late. And also, of course, at high upfront costs. I mean, heat pumps, the debate in Germany, that these investments are now visible for households and at the building level at a time where there's still some uncertainty about how the costs will develop, the costs of gas, costs of electricity, costs of hydrogen, if possible. There's still an open debate about that. And you might have heard from a political perspective that actually there has been resistance to those 2023 policy instruments introduced. There's a long debate about this, and also beyond individual households or citizens being very critical about these instruments, there has been also a campaign, a really orchestrated campaign to fuel such fears, like people will want to take things out of your basement, and they have been fueled and exploited by political forces, by media and parties, oppositional parties, including the very far right anti-democratic parties. So this, I think, completes the picture a little. And also coming back to these, I mean, primary objectives of increasing energy efficiency of the building envelope, we see the positive effects there, but we can also discern that building costs have increased a lot, and not all of that increases, of course, can be attributed to the efficiency standards, but some can. And some actually go through to making housing unaffordable. I mean, they contribute partly to the situation that we've just too little affordable housing in Germany. And that is a very severe problem. And it is kind of connected. Now, we are short of time at this presentation, but I want to start introducing another initiative that is actually, you could call it a bottom-up initiative. We can think of organizing housing differently. And this is going on in Germany for decades. And I've been enjoying a position to witness this personally. People started in the mid-90s to develop housing as cooperatives or as actually collectives, not necessarily in the form of a cooperative, of a formal cooperative. And this changes things dramatically. If we just to give one example, I co-founded a cooperative in 1997, and we built in 1999 and 2001, 2 houses neighboring each other respectively, with a total of 75 housing units. And I'm enjoying still today and again today the rent that results from that investments that we did of 7.5 million euro, I think, which I do experience as a low cost of the retrofit of the building. It could also be the same scheme could be applied to retrofits and is in Germany applied to retrofitting, which results in low costs of the buildings and then, of course, low rents. In the case of the cooperative that I'm living in now, 7.90 euros is the annual rate per square meter. And that is about half of what people pay in the neighborhood around me. And this, of course, then results in the feeling of safety and comfort. And of course, it enables also sharing amenities in these buildings. And that brings me to the development level and the building level. We can share facilities. We've got flexible layouts, which all increase kind of the value of the housing units for us. And all of these contribute, in my view, a lot to what I perceive as sustainable housing. And the question then could be, actually, could this be supported? Could this somehow be fostered and accelerated? And I don't see that much on the national level or the international level. There's some municipalities who engage in that, supporting cooperatives in the way they sell ground, for example. They design the calls for proposals, etc. The purchasing, etc. A few cities, and luckily in Freiburg, we've got some examples that I find really interesting and illustrative. of that, from the 1990s, the so-called model district, a sustainability model district of Vauban in Freiburg, but very recently also a district, a small district where 550 housing units shall be built, but all of them with non-profit units building the houses. So that all of that 550 housing units will be commissioned by the municipality out to non-profit oriented actors, just as an example. And I think this is not on the debate so much if we look at the media or the policy landscape. So now we could integrate actually what Linda has presented from her perspective with some elements of my table here, but this gets then a bit dense, I would say. But I mean, we make the point of taking a broader perspective. We would also like to ask you in that very direction. We would like to involve you, and we've called this section now open discussion. And we've saved a lot of time for this, and we would like to actually ask you with a blank sheet, so to speak. And Linda has prepared actually a tool for us all to share ideas and thoughts.